second largest blob there was coal. So I want to talk about coal. We don't talk about it enough in New England, but it is critical to solving the climate crisis. So I want to talk about our Beyond Coal campaign. The Sierra Club International campaign has been going on since 2002, and it really is transforming the landscape. It has the potential to do a lot more, and I'll just give you an overview of it. But just so everybody knows, Sierra Club is the nation's oldest, largest environmental organization. It was founded in 1892, and there are 63 chapters around the country. Most of them are one per state, but a couple have others. The Sierra Club Maine chapter was started 20 years ago. This is our 20th year, and has over 8,000 members and supporters in the state. So why coal? This is a picture of coal. If you've never been to West Virginia or Kentucky or Ohio, you probably haven't seen these kinds of pictures. But that's coal mining right there, and it also includes mountaintop removal. Those were beautiful mountains, and they are not anymore. So coal is arguably the biggest obstacle to solving the climate crisis. The presence of coal, the use of coal. It's the largest source of U.S. carbon pollution. Nearly 1/3 of the total amount comes from the burning of coal. It accounts for 78% of the carbon released from the electricity sector. So if we're going to do something about climate, we must stop burning coal. I mean, it's really that simple. Coal has, in addition to the carbon effects, it has enormous long-term serious health and economic impacts. Wide variety. There's environmental impacts. I'm not going to go through the litany, but I'll mention the health in particular. And then, as was mentioned in the previous presentation, dirty cheap coal, artificially cheap coal, keeps clean energy power like wind and solar out of the marketplace. So it is crowding that out, and if we are going to ever replace it, we're going to have to deal with it. And we are dealing with it. So here's a little closer view of the situation. This says, it's a little hard to read this, so I'll run through it. The emissions from fossil fuel power plants are percent of total U.S. air emissions. So this is what coal is doing. 60% of the arsenic from the electricity center comes from coal. 60% of the sulfur dioxides, 13% of the NOx, 30% of the heavy metals of nickel, and 20% of chromium, and half of all the emissions of mercury in the United States come from coal-fired power plants. That's a powerful neurotoxin that has caused a lot of problems. It was also mentioned that SO2 is has a number of effects, smog, but also acid rain. It's bad stuff to burn. So this chart I like a little better because it explains it in a simpler way. We're getting acid rain, smog and ozone, soot, hazardous air pollutants and greenhouse gases, and this lists all of the health and environmental effects and some of the more serious ones. We'll talk about how serious these health impacts are. First of all, more than 50% of Americans live within 30 miles of a coal plant. That's surprising again for New Englanders. Mercury poisoning is a powerful neurotoxin. It retards the IQ of children. It's one of the things that we know that mercury does. Mercury poisoning impacts at least 1 in 12 U.S. women and places their children at risk, and this is for a lifetime of risk. Mercury doesn't go away, you don't get better. I mean, you can deal with it, but you don't get better. The health costs of coal, all of the air pollution health impacts added up, and these numbers are probably very conservative. $100 billion in health costs annually, 13,000 premature deaths annually. it's probably the most serious health problem in America, arguably. So, the Sierra Club, starting in 2002, started this Beyond Coal campaign, and we have three major goals. The first is to stop the construction of new coal-fired power plants. You might remember that when Dick Cheney started his task force soon after getting into office in the early 2000s, he had proposed to build 500 new coal-fired power plants in the United States. This would have been catastrophic if they had succeeded. But they have succeeded in building some. So one of the things we're going to do, and are doing, is stopping all the construction, whenever possible, of new coal-fired power plants. It's a dinosaur, 19th century technology. We need to leave it in the ground. But that's not enough, of course. And more importantly, we have to retire the country's existing coal plants and replace them with clean energy no later than 2030. And that is a tall task. And finally, we need to keep U.S. coal reserves underground and out of world markets. We can't do much about what China and India are doing with coal. But one thing we can do is not sell them our coal and have it burned. So that's an important part of this. So where is coal? Not in New England, but you see there are a couple of very large pockets. Not only in the Ohio Valley, so to speak, and down in the south, and into the Ozarks, but there's another swath in the Middle West, northern Midwest, and some in Alaska. And that's a lot of coal, actually. Now, I mentioned that we don't have coal. We used to use coal exclusively in Maine, as most people did in the 20th century, early part of the 20th century. But Maine has suffered greatly, all of northern New England suffers greatly from coal burning, particularly in the Ohio Valley, which is really where the bulk of the coal burning takes place. This slogan, Tailpipe of the Nation, is not as nice as Vacation Land, but, or the way life should be. But it is sadly true. That pollution that comes from coal-fired power plants, it moves through the Northeast, and we take it. In fact, much of our air pollution problems and smog problems are the result of coal burning that takes place in the Ohio Valley. Having said that, there are 5 coal plants remaining in New England. The nearest one is the Siller Station in Portsmouth, and if you go over the 95 bridge, you've seen it. It's on your right as you're going from Maine to New Hampshire. That is a picture of it. You've seen it many times. It was built in 1949. It's still operating. It has 3 boilers. 2 are burning coal. It has no modern pollution control technology, like scrubbers. This is still burning, and the pollution is coming across the river into York County. And not surprisingly, York County has some of the worst asthma rates and respiratory problems in the state of Maine. This is an ad that I like. I think it conveys quite clearly what the issue is here. It says your local coal burning power plant has a new filter, and her name is Jasmine. This, I think, connects the dots rather well. So here are the facts. According to the American Lung Association, there are 200,000 people in York County. You know, this is where, that's the southern county next to New Hampshire. 200,000 at risk for chronic respiratory illnesses. That includes, and not only, but includes prominently asthma and chronic bronchitis. ALA says that there are 4,000 children in York County and 17,000 adults who are at risk for asthma. The state of Maine did a study. 16% of 5th and 6th graders are diagnosed with asthma just in 2009. You probably know some children who have to use inhalers. This is a widespread problem. 630 people are hospitalized due to asthma in that 4-year period, 2004 to 8, and over 1,100 ER visits due to asthma just in 2008. So these are real impacts, and people suffer. Now, here's what we've done so far nationally. We have succeeded in retiring 143 coal plants. That's good, but there are 379 more. pretty good percentage in 10 years. But 379 is still a big challenge. We have installed 66,400 megawatts of clean renewable powers in that time. But you see how much more we have to go there. It's a big number, 708,000 megawatts. To put this in, those numbers don't mean a lot there, people, but to put this again in terms of health, according to the Clean Air Task Force, retiring one coal plant prevents, depending on the size of the coal plant, but on average, if you retire a plant, it prevents more than 29 premature deaths, 47 heart attacks, 146 asthma attacks, and emergency room visits. So that's what it means. So if you can multiply 143 by those numbers, you can see the benefits. If you multiply it by 379, see where we got to go. In addition, as I mentioned, Vice President Cheney had attempted to put forth a plan to build 500 new coal-fired power plants. A few have been built, but so far 173 plants have been defeated. These are ones that were proposed. And they were all over, including in Massachusetts. Now, it's not enough just to shut down coal. It's sort of necessary, but not sufficient, right? You have to stop burning coal, shut it down, leave the coal in the ground. But it makes no real difference if we don't replace that coal with clean energy in the long run. Short run, it does. There are basically three ways to do this. One is to increase the energy efficiency of every building in the world and in the U.S. So a lot has to be done through energy efficiency. And then clean energy, particularly wind and solar, though not only. There are other ones. I believe that offshore wind, that's the one in off Denmark, off of Copenhagen. And we don't have anything like that in the United States yet, still. Now, to put some real numbers on this, if we're going to meet the target of no coal in 2030 and replace that with clean energy, this gives you a real sense of the scale of the issue. Right now, you can see the rapid growth, which is very exciting in solar. But in 2011, there's 1,900 megawatts installed in the U.S. 7,000 installed for wind, and not so much geothermal. But take a look at what would need to be done. We're doing pretty well on wind, but very, very far behind on solar and geothermal. Now, this Congress is not going to do anything. The House of Representatives is controlled by people who are in the pockets of big oil and big carbon and big coal. So we have been counting on the Obama administration to take action that they can do administratively. The president can do with his signature. And they have been doing, and the president's administration has been doing quite a bit. Now this is all very wonky and I'm not going to review it, but there are a number of things that have been done. The president needs to do a lot more. And that's why so many people, including folks like me and others here, went to D.C. Last month to send the message to the president at the big rally that he needs to do more. So he not only needs to say no to the Keystone XL pipeline, carrying tar sands from Canada, say no to the Northeast tar sands pipeline that would come through Maine, but he really finally needs to set standards to limit the carbon coming from existing power plants. And that would be the key way to kill coal in the U.S. They just can't compete. They would have to finally internalize their costs, and they will fall away. The economics don't allow for it if they have to do that. One thing I want to talk about, I'm close to the end here, is that there is this assumption here, that a long-standing assumption that there are a lot of mining jobs, a lot of coal jobs, and there are some, and they're not that significant. If you compare the number of jobs involved in the wind and solar industry, it far exceeds the number of jobs into the coal mining and coal plants. So this transition to move workers out of dirty energy industries like coal needs to continue apace. So we need to have that top line go further to the right and the one correspondingly below it to the left. But that gives you a reality check. So if you ever hear something about the jobs with the environment, this is really what's going on right now. I was going to call the presentation "Coal Sucks," but I thought I'd end with it instead. Another one of my favorite images. If you want to find out more about the Beyond Coal campaign and what we're doing to shut down the Schiller Station coal plant in Portsmouth, which affects folks in Elliott and Bethel, and Elliott and South Berwick and Kittery, and all of York County, you can find out more about it and all of the stuff that Sierra Club is up to. We're heavily involved in the fight to stop the tar sands pipeline through New England, and we're heavily involved in stopping the proposed east-west highway or energy corridor. But if you want to find out how to get involved and more of what we do, take a look at our website at maine.sierraclub.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Are you based here in Portland?
Yeah, the office is at 44 Oak Street.
And are you looking for interns to help out with anything?
Yes, that is a good question. Yes, we can't afford to pay interns, so we're lucky enough to have a couple of Bowdoin interns that have sort of paid projects, but we're always looking for interns, so yes, please do send them our way.
Okay.
We can talk more about that.